Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. My name is Catherine Tao. Today on our show, we have Jeremy Clover, a Director of Analytics at Facebook Reality Labs. And today we're going to be speaking about video game technology. And I'm very excited to hear more about this. So welcome to the show, Jeremy. Very excited to speak with you.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Can you go ahead and just introduce yourself and tell us more about your background?
Yeah, so I'm Jeremy. I support analytics and Facebook Reality Labs, which we call FRL. So you'll hear a lot of that shorthand throughout this conversation. I've been at Facebook now for about 7 years, on and off. I'm actually what they call boomerang. I was at Facebook for 2 years, left, and then came back. And when I came back to Facebook the second time around, I've been here now for 5 years. And I came back specifically to join, at the time, Oculus. Before that, my background, as far as college, my undergraduate degree, I started doing computer science and very quickly shifted into business, and then found love of stats actually in marketing. So I ended up getting very involved in marketing statistics because I saw my first direct mail set. It was very interesting to see, like, hey, it can be ROI positive if you send out these mailers, and there's a whole statistical model behind it. So it kind of spoke to me. So I got involved in that. And then post-college, I ended up jumping around a lot of different jobs. I did a lot of different things, everything from financial analytics to marketing analytics to title insurance, working in mortgage. So I was really all over the place. And I think that some of the key touch points were really, I worked in the hardware industry. So for those of you who are of appropriate age, I worked at a place called Gateway Computers back in the day. I worked at Western Digital, which makes hard drives, and that's where I learned a lot about kind of hardware and quality informatics when you think about that. I worked for a company called Foundation 9 that did video game development. A lot of their stuff was movie IPs and movie titles. Then I ultimately ended up working at this place called Gaikai, which was streaming, online streaming for games. So, you know, can you render in the cloud and bring it over the wire? Ultimately, that company was purchased by PlayStation and became PlayStation Live. So it was the very kind of the beginning of cloud gaming. And then, you know, with this background that was kind of data analytics and marketing and business intelligence and ETL and hardware and software and video games, it's like, this is the only place that I could logically end up was this cross section of all of them, which started with Oculus.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of your background has a lot to do with video game technology. Have you kind of just been drawn to this, or was it just your connections kind of keeping you with all your paths to this virtual reality gaming?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a combination of things, right? Where it's something that I was passionate about. You know, I was passionate about gaming growing up. I was a teenager in the 90s, and that was really during the peak of things like Super Nintendo had just started coming out, and in the late 80s, early 90s, and you had Sega Genesis, and then you had PlayStation. There's a great book, by the way, if anybody ever wants to read about this, called The Console Wars, which is fantastic, and it covers the history of this. So from a passion point of view, this was always a big input into my life. And I never thought that I would end up working in this space. I lived in Southern California in Orange County, and I kind of jumped around jobs, and really my gateway into that world was this company, Foundation 9, where I joined as a financial analyst, and really started looking at the production process of video games and how do you understand, like, the flow of when you fund what, who does what at what point. And it was an amazing world to be a part of. So I think it was fortunate that I ended up working in that space, but it definitely was something I'm passionate about, and it's something I continue to be passionate about. Is really entertainment. Like, how do you bring joy to people? And now we get to do that, you know, every day in FRL with our products, which is great.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And virtual reality gaming is really changing and really shaping the way that we are gaming, even within our households now. So it's really cool how technology is really innovating now. And I really want to jump into what you and your team do at Facebook Reality Labs. What are some of the projects that you've worked on? Kind of tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I support what's called Analytics All Up, and this includes data science, what you consider data science, and that's actually a very wide net now. It's like saying software engineering. There's all sorts of different types of data science. And then data engineering, which is a big part of my background, which is a necessary foundation. And so I'll just take a quick aside here and say, for those of you who are, say, in the startup space, or those of you who are starting to get into analytics, data engineering is an incredibly important part of that process. You need the clean data, you need the foundation. I think what you'll find with data science is if you join an organization that's nothing but data scientists, they spend 90% of their time cleaning data and doing data engineering work in a way that data engineers could do better and faster. And so I think the front end, back end relationship between these two parts is incredibly important, and that's our team. So we have both sides of kind of that equation. Within data science, we have everything from like deep technical stuff, people who look at models, people who look at forecasts, people who try to understand, the algorithms and the ranking and the processes there, all the way over to the business side, like people who are looking at the business and what are the goals that we should be setting, and how do we achieve those goals? How do we push product teams to think more critically? So a lot of I think data science is focused on the data, and one of the conversations we're finding now is a lot more about the science, which is being hypothesis driven, thinking about what you're actually trying to solve, making sure that you're articulating it in such a way that's falsifiable. Like I think one of the more frustrating things as a data scientist is to have somebody come to you and say like, oh, I'm just curious, or I wonder. It's like, no. I like curiosity. Well, it's a meaningful part of the exploration. We want to know what you do with this and how you leverage it, and what is the decision that's going to drive. So that's an important part of the way that we approach analytics at Facebook and All Up, and then FRL. And then within FRL, we have a bunch of different product verticals. Mostly today we're going to be talking about Oculus, but we also have the AR side of the world, which looks at things like Spark, which is the technology that does masks in Messenger, when you're sending messages there, as well as Portal, and some of the foundational technologies that go into our surfaces, which are like Oculus. So how do we help people develop better hand tracking, better eye tracking, better body tracking? This is all part of what we do. So it's a pretty dynamic space, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, it certainly keeps me, I don't get bored. Let's put it that way. It's different problems every day, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. Things are always changing too. So that's kind of what makes it fun, especially working in a technology field. Things are always changing.
Oh, and VR particularly. I mean, if you just even think back 5 years, all we had was the Rift. And the Rift, I think, was getting ready to launch, and you had Gear VR. And how this industry has accelerated in 5 years has been amazing. We've gone from something that was considered, niche and built on the back of a Kickstarter with a bunch of hobbyists and people who are passionate. And now Quest 2 it's competitive in the console space. So it's just happened incredibly quick.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that you kind of touched on a little bit about how companies are leveraging their data to kind of work with this video game production, but could you elaborate on maybe more specific examples on this?
Yeah, you asked about that. So project. So when we look at things, we approach the space as a platform, right? So we are this cross section between developers and consumers when you think about the market, right? So, but there's this interesting catch-22, like a chicken egg situation. What comes first, right? Is like developers don't come to platforms where there's not consumers, and consumers don't come to platforms where there's not games, right? So where do you start? Like, if you were going to fund this, if we were going to build games, if we were going to reach out to developers and get them to build these applications and platforms and games, what would we build first? And so some of our really early projects were thinking about things like, what does product market fit look like in this space? What is good? What is a good application? How do people consume this product? I think one of my favorite stories early in the days of VR, when we looked at Rift, we were really trying to understand this concept of room space, right? So you have these tracking these sensors essentially that are tracking the headset. So there's movement, and it's XYZ. So it's forward, back, left, right. You've got pitch and yaw, and it's all in this three-dimensional space. And at the time when Rift was launched, there was this concept that everybody wanted room scale. Like room scale. So you can get up and you can wander around the room and you can play and you occupy this huge space. And some of the early projects that we were looking at as a data science team is like, okay, that's an interesting assumption, but one, like, what is room scale? Like, rooms are very, you know, cultural and location dependent. Like in the United States, I had this wonderful living room that me and my family can hang out in, but if you go to, say, Iceland or Japan, rooms are incredibly small. So what does room scale mean? And our responsibility in understanding this was to be able to go back to developers who are building these applications. And you don't want to go to a developer and say, hey, you should use a 10 foot by 10 foot space because that's going to be amazing and everybody will love it. But then it turns out if you go into Asia, nobody has 10 foot by 10 foot spaces. It's an incredibly rare thing. So a lot of the early work we did was exploring this space. And one of the things that we found as we were exploring where people occupied the space was that there was much more stationary consumption of VR than we originally expected. I think if you can go back through the Google history, Jason Rubin, who at the time was leading our content team, talked about this. And this was a collaboration that the content team and data science did together, which was really finding out that within this room scale ambition that we had, we found that there were a bunch of people who didn't move, who actually just sat down. And so we were doing different analyses to understand what is this kind of distribution between sitting and standing. And if we're building applications, are we over indexing on one type of use and not the other? Like, do we fund too many full room scale games, but we're not funding enough games for people who maybe don't want to be standing up and running in circles for an hour, you know? So it was pretty illuminating to see how the assumptions that we have as a company, how those actually meet the market, because the market's always going to change what you think because we're so inside of it. You know, we live, breathe VR. And then when it gets out to the consumer market, they use it incredibly differently than what we thought. And so it's really been a journey of understanding all of these different use cases, all of the different user segmentations, all of the different types of applications, how those applications are connected. And it helps us understand everything from, you know, what should we be funding 3 to 5 years in the future? What should we be building? To what do we uprank when we're thinking about the algorithms in the store and you're viewing your Explore feed and the recommended for you content? How do we know that you like this? So all of these dynamics are at play. So it's a pretty cool space. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that your team really needs to think about a lot of different factors that I think the normal person wouldn't think about. Like I would not think about room space, for example, when kind of building a video game like that. But that's awesome to kind of think about. And I'm glad you also touched on a little bit about the consumer side and just talking about what would be best for the consumer to use in terms of video games. And so how do you kind of figure out what is appealing to the users? How do you know what video games will take off after it's been made?
Yeah, it's complicated. It's really complicated. I mean, we don't always know, right? This is where it comes to one of the things that we help the organization do is very crisply articulate the hypotheses. Because if you think about the video game space, you know, it's very wide ranging in what it covers. It's everything from something like Candy Crush on mobile. That's a game, right? And people, like, there are hardcore Candy Crush users, all the way through to like Animal Crossing and that kind of genre of these lighter weight games. And then you've got the harder core games that are, you know, your Call of Duties and your shooters and your your PUBGs, your Fortnites, your Minecrafts. There's this wide range of things, and it's everything from these like solo small dose applications to these massive scale social platforms that people can get together. I think Roblox is an example of that, where you're actually creating an ecosystem where there's content creators and content consumers. And so you think about it in terms of the first thing you have to do in this space is actually define what is the hypothesis of this app? Why are we funding it? We do everything from direct fund to subsidize to just reach out to developers and help them understand kind of the dynamics of the market. But the first thing that you have to do is help people articulate what success is, because there is no single version of success, right? It breaks down by segments. It breaks down by demographics. It's like, what type of age do you want to reach? What is this an American game? Is this a game that we think is going to do better in Europe? What's the localization that it needs to do? What's the kind of... We have a...
Doing this.
Yeah?
You're almost going to the zoo.
You almost going to the zoo? they're going to the zoo today. So, okay, I gotta finish. So going back really quick, so we really do think about it in terms of what is success for any individual app. And then within that, then you can start to track the metrics. And the metrics may be something as simple as time or retention. Do people continue to use this over the long term? But if you're a single serving game, say you're a game that you can finish in 20 minutes, it's not about time or retention, it's about finishing. And so some games, it's about the percent completion against the total time of the game. So it really, it varies wildly, but a big part of our job isn't just tracking the success or modeling the success or writing, you know, the queries or the analysis. It's helping define that. And so our responsibility, we look at further up the funnel than just answering the questions, but helping articulate better questions to begin with.
Yeah, and I think that's all great things that you have to really take an account for to really think about the user and what they want. But I also wanted to talk about kind of what your views are on the future of video gaming in general. How do you think it will be innovated in the future?
I think how is video gaming going to be? For us, I mean, it's Facebook, right? So we do have in our core value proposition believes that this is going to be social. And I think the market is really bearing that out. I think you look at things like Fortnite, for example. These communities are starting to build around the game. But the game, the concept of a single player game, it still exists, but now that we have all these technologies and you can talk to people and there's all these platforms that support communication, you know, something like Discord and all these integrations now, whether it be audio or video or people even watching other people play games. I think you're going to find that the industry, in addition to the fact that, you know, the fidelity is going to continue to improve, the interactions are going to continue to improve. Like with VR, we're going deep on this. You know, we've launched within Quest 2 hand tracking, so that's going to change the dynamics of who can play the game. I'll show you this. Right? For example, this right now is the controller for Quest, right? It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons. One of the controllers is like, and it's the joystick. So there's a lot that you have to do, and then you have 2 of these, one for each hand. So it really is, you're almost limiting your reach based on the interfaces and the controllers. And so for us, I think what's going to unlock a lot of broader reach of gaming and how that's going to augment over time is you're not going to need this. It's going to be something else. It's going to be this. And that's going to make the gaming experience, particularly in VR, completely different. It's going to make the types of games that you can develop completely different. And so we think it's going to be social. The interaction paradigms are going to change. And then, of course, fidelity is going to continue to improve. And so ultimately, you're just going to be building other realities. And so I think that's the long play for us, is how do we be part of that, building that reality that's going to be an immersive reality for many, many, many more people than I think are currently what you would currently consider video game consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to hear your perspective on everything as someone who's kind of a professional in the field. But that's awesome. And it's so great to be able to speak with you today, Jeremy. And I feel like I've learned so much about just the video gaming world.
Yeah. And we're deep in this every day, and there's so little we know. I mean, we're learning more and more and more every day, and it's amazing. It's an amazing space, and it's a dynamic space, and it's going to continue to be that way. So it's aside from the fact that it's great to have a place where I get a paycheck doing something that I love. It's also just amazing to watch how quickly this field is advancing. And from a data point of view, it's wonderful to be a contributing part of that, to know that the work that the team particularly, I'm in management at this point. I always say I don't do anything meaningful. I work on people problems. The people on my teams, the individual contributors, and the people who actually get up, roll up their sleeves and do the analysis, those are the people that are finding out amazing things about what the future is going to be. And it's awesome to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And I wanted to kind of talk more about the data standard now. So we're a community, we're trying to build And we're comprised of a bunch of data enthusiasts and data thought leaders. And we're just kind of a platform where it's open for everyone to collaborate and network with each other. So what is something the community can do for you?
Look, I think the data community is going to be changing. It's going to be changing a lot, right? The world and how you think about data and how you balance, particularly data with consumer privacy, and how you think about conscientious asking of questions and what type of data can we use and when, and how do we make sure that consumers understand how the data is being collected. So much of this is going to be a conversation that is greater than any individual person or any individual company, right? These standards are being set globally, regionally, country, like even states are coming up with their different concepts. I think the community is where a lot of the value, being able to articulate the value that we can bring to these different businesses is going to start. It's going to start with us and start with those conversations. So I think for me, I'm just interested in being a part of and seeing how we as data people can continue to, help build products that help make the world, for me, a more entertaining and enjoyable place. And I think data is a way that we accelerate that. In addition, look, we're all a bunch of nerds in different ways. I think this is, there's a certain thing that gets you involved in this industry. And I love seeing how much greater the industry is than the individuals in it. And so I like that there's communities that are starting to be developed. And I used to do a lot of writing. So for example, of course I'm on LinkedIn and anybody can find me there. It's just /Jeremy Clover. But I'm learning a lot more about, other industries through things like Medium or reading articles or listening to the data standard, which I did when I was reached out to just to make sure it's a very legit place. You're a very legit place, which is good. So I'm just excited to see that the conversation is starting to happen and the community is starting to happen. Same, if you look back talking about what I was talking about with Oculus, right? Communities develop around things. They start with the thing, and then people that are passionate about things come together and they have conversations around it. And so I think the conversations that happen in this data community are going to really accelerate the value that we bring, period, to companies, to organizations, to governments. So I'm actually, more than anything, I'm just curious to see where it goes. And happy to be a part of it. I'm really happy that you all reached out.
Yeah, and it was so great to have you on the podcast. And it's very clear that you're very passionate about this field, and it's great to see your enthusiasm for everything that you've spoken about today. And so for to our audience, for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as our YouTube and LinkedIn page. And this episode is sponsored by Pandio. They're innovating the tech space with their Apache Pulsar messaging system. So learn more about their work at pandio.com. And thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us. It was so great to speak with you and just hear about your passions. And it's clear that you really enjoy the field that you're working in. So thank you for sharing everything.
Yeah, and look, if there's anything I can encourage you to do or your audience to do, it's find something that you love. I mean, it makes such a difference in the day-to-day. And then, my final plug, hopefully, if there's anybody, if you are in the data space, data engineer, data scientist, just go to facebook.com, the careers page, and look for FRL. We're always looking to hire great talent. We love people who are passionate about product and product thinking. So if you really want to help drive an industry forward and help make better decisions, help product people and engineers make better decisions, by all means, please apply to the jobs. And again, that's we do Portal, we do AR, we do VR. There's all sorts of different products that we have in this space. So thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
I think the podcast went great. Yeah. I don't have anything that we need to redo, but do you have any questions that you'd like us to re-record at all?
No, I think it went fine, and I'm okay. I don't mind. Like one of the things with my daughter coming through and all that, you keep it by all means. I think it's look. I found that I do a lot of meetings like this, and it's messy working at home, but I want people to be okay with that.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
great.